So I'd like to introduce Deanna Kim. Deanna Kim is one of our educational therapists at Summit Center. She works out of our Walnut Creek office. She also works at a local private school, and she specializes in academic coaching and math interventions. Her passion is to empower students to grow in executive functioning skills. And she collaborates with parents. She's coined the term T.O.P.S skills, and T.O.P.S, T.O.P.S stands for time management, organization, planning, and self-understanding. And these are the skills that she works on with the students and the families that are her clients. Before becoming an educational therapist, Deanna was a classroom teacher and a learning specialist, and she's the mother of two really darling twin boys. So, Deanna, thank you for presenting for us today. I'm going to switch off and bring up the slides for us. All right, take it away, Deanna.
Okay. Hi, everyone. This is my first webinar, and I'm very excited to be here. And when I was an undergraduate student at Berkeley, UC Berkeley, the first semester, I found out that I'm a little bit different from other kids, college kids. When you're at high school, you do your own thing. You don't really know how your friends study or do your homework, but yes, go Bears. But in college, you live with other people in a dorm, right? So you know exactly what their lifestyle is. And when my friends and dorm mates are hanging out after midnight, I had to go to bed at my own time. And I found out that I needed to go to bed and get enough sleep so that I can function the next day. And so I couldn't do all-nighter like my friends and cramming for the test the day before or writing paper. But I found out that I just have to start my projects early on and work on it little by little and get it done a week before the deadline, something like that. So I think that my issues with sleep issues and anxiety kind of brought me here, and I'm kind of thankful the experience that I had. Back then, it was kind of really hard, and it was a lonely path that I had to take to really go with my schedule and delay gratifications. When clients come to me, I ask them, why do you want to learn time management skills? They usually say, oh, I want to get better grades, I want to be productive. And as we dig deeper and get to know each other, some people say, I want to socialize with my friends more. I want to have more free time. I want to have better health. But I think that it really comes down to 90% of my clients. It's kind of about self-esteem. Feeling really good about themselves. A lot of people have a lot of pain because of lack of time management skills. And I found out that as I work with these students and learning these tools, kids felt empowered. They felt really good about themselves. So I want to know what your story is. What brought you here today? Maybe you're here because you have a story like me, somewhat different from other people. Maybe you're here because you want to increase self-esteem. Here's the premise of today's presentation. Some of us are more time challenged than others, but time management is a learnable skill. So I'm going to go with this growth mindset that kids that we work with or kids at our home, they're not doing it on purpose, but because they have a lagging skill. Here's the framework of today's presentation. I call it thinking pie. So if you see the circle, there are 4 pieces of pie. I'm going to go through each piece and kind of introduce a principle that I came up with. And this will help us guide our mindset and approaches as we work with our kids. At any moment, if you have any comments or aha moments or an action step that you would like to follow through, you're welcome to share out by typing up your comments in the chat box. And at the end of each section, I'm going to pause and let our moderator, Elizabeth, share out the comments that you've been typing up. I think the more you're engaged and the more you participate, the more you're going to get out of this presentation. In terms of timeline, since we're learning about time management skills, each piece of pie will take about 10 minutes or so. You're going to be listening to me for about 10 minutes. I hope you can sustain your focus and attention. And then we're going to pause and hear from what other people are thinking about this topic. The first question I have for you is, if you could just type up what age your child is, or if you have multiple children, what are their grade levels? What age is it? Okay, I see that 13, 10, 15. That's really good to know. I wish I could see you in person and be able to read your nonverbal language and your smiles, but I'm going to do my best to visualize who you are. So I'm seeing anywhere between age 4 all the way to 14 years old. And that's what we're going to cover today. The first piece of thinking pie is called proactive approach. Stephen Covey, in the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, talks about begin with the end in mind. So I decided that we're going to start this thinking pie with a proactive approach. Do you ever think about 10, 20 years from now? Gee, I really hope my kid would have this kind of habits. Do you think about that sometimes? Do you visualize your children? You know how kids are growing up so fast? I felt like I just gave birth. Like a couple days ago, but now my boys are almost 4 years old. So do you really visualize your kids as an adult having these habits or skills? This is what the research says about developmental time projection. I think most people know, and they're very understanding with infants. For infants, time is all about now or later. If they cannot see their mommies in front of them, because the mommy's been gone even if the mommy's gone for 1 minute, it just feels like an eternity. You've all experienced that, right? And now we move to the preschoolers. They can only project up to 20 minutes. So for preschoolers, driving to somewhere for 30 minutes can be a long time for them. Now let's move on to elementary school kids, twins. They can project up to 12 hours. So when your child says, oh, I'm going to do it tomorrow, that can mean actually tomorrow, or it can be a week from now. Because they can only comprehend, sense the passage of time up to 12 hours. And let's talk about teens. Nowadays, teens get a lot of projects, whether it's research paper or presentations, and teens are required to manage their project that is due 2 or 3 weeks later. If you have teens, maybe you would relate to this experience. Teens saying, "Oh, it's just far away. The due date is far away," because they can only project up to 3 days. That's when they feel the sense of urgency. Oh, wow, the test is the day after tomorrow. Okay, I better work on it. So what's the point of this research? There's 3 reasons why I wanted to share this research. Number 1, by understanding our kids' developmental time projections, we can be more understanding and become less frustrated with our kids. Number 2 is we can have a realistic expectation for our kids. Number 3, we can be proactive, making a plan for our kids beyond their developmental time projection. So here's what not to do. Mom says, "Hey, Bob, did you finish your book report that's due tomorrow?" And Bob says, "No." And Mom says, "How many times did I tell you to work on it? It's due tomorrow and you had 2 weeks to work on it." And Bob slams the door and walks away. This is not a proactive approach, but a reactive approach. This interaction will not only damage the parent-child relationship, but it's going to bring up the guilt and the shame and the stress in our kids. Instead, we can appeal to our kids' brain by helping them come up with their productive desires. I believe that every single kid who may seem lazy or seem indifferent, deep inside, they have these desires that are productive. So maybe we can have a conversation something like this. "Lisa, would you like to attend college someday? Did you know that college is all about long-term projects? You don't have to turn in daily homework like you're doing right now at high school, but you have to turn in big projects." Or maybe we can say something like this. "Hey, Rebecca, if you could choose, would you rather go to your birthday party by finishing your report 1 day earlier, or would you rather just stay home and do it the day before, the way you're used to doing?" If we can help our kids visualize the future in a concrete way by understanding what their desires are, what their interests are, maybe we're taking 1 step closer to proactive approach. I really like to use these questions with my clients. "Brandon, how would you feel if you completed that task?" Or "How would you feel if you didn't complete the task?" You can use the first one or the second one to really motivate and stimulate how it's going to feel like at the end, instead of focusing on the present moment, which can be boredom, dread, frustrations. But if you can really bring up that emotions of, wow, I'm going to feel really proud of myself or making through this project when I didn't feel like it. Or, yeah, if I didn't do this right now, I will kind of feel really bad about myself. Just like the compound interest formula, the more you invest your energy and time, at the beginning, the more benefits your children will reap later on. Here's an example of proactive approach by doing backwards planning. So why backwards planning? It really helps you to slow down by starting from the due date and going backwards. So if you can see these sticky notes, handy dandy sticky notes, I just use these sticky notes and I work with my kids to break down the project into smaller steps. Whenever the task takes more than one sitting, I just go into, okay, let's take out our sticky notes and we're going to do backwards planning. Most kids forget that they need to print, staple, and put it in the backpack, and that's actually counts as one step. We're going to come back to this backwards planning later on, but do you see how it's 5-page essay? Kids say, oh, if I show you this, they say, oh, it looks manageable, it's doable. Because just thinking about a project or writing an essay is so intimidating. But if we break it down with them, then they might say, oh, wow, I think I can do one little tiny step today. It's very empowering. And the nice thing about the sticky notes is it's very easy to manipulate. If you skip a step, if you want to change the sequence, you can just instantly move them around without rewriting. Other families like to print out quarterly calendar and put it up on the wall. And I advise parents to blame on their brain. Say, hey, mommy has so many things to keep track of. So do you mind if we just put down some tests and some long-term projects and just put it on our calendar? It will be dedicated to that. And if you have multiple children, it's really hard to remember and keep track of all those different important tests and events. And having it on the wall is really helpful, even if you have it on your Google Calendar, because you can refer to it. Everyone can see it at the same time. It will be a really good reminder. Brian Tracy, in a book, Time Management Made Simple, has this quote, habits are easy to live with, but hard to form. Printing out a calendar is not going to be a difficult task, but keeping up with it is going to be challenging. But once you get into a habit of printing out and noting the important dates, our kids will be so much more successful and have less stress. So I want to know from this audience if anyone has difficulty sustaining attention up to this point. Even as an adult who seems to be disciplined, we have difficulty sustaining attention because of the wealth of technology and available electronics. Can you imagine how much more it will be challenging for our kids to sustain attention? Yes, tough to sustain attention. So kids are always calling out for SOS, but in a silent way. And sometimes they're not even aware of it. Sometimes our kids find themselves in a swamp. They don't know how they got there, but they're just stuck and they need help. And we can be very proactive, preventing these distractions when they're supposed to be on work. So one high school kid told me this. Hey, Deanna, I'm so attached to my iPhone. It's like a part of me. It's like a piece of my body. I don't think I can ever live without my iPhone. And guess what the topic was that day is distractions. That was the topic. So we did this exercise together. I said, hey, Johnny, how about we rate your brain's distractions? Most kids say, oh, you know what? Listening to my music on Pandora and having my phone on, it doesn't really bother me. It doesn't distract me. However, whenever I do this exercise, it's so interesting what the kids do. So this student, Johnny, he rated Snapchat as the most distracted factor, and he went down. So like a minute ago, he said, oh, you know, I really need my iPhone when I'm doing my homework. And the next minute, it was like, oh, okay, that's fine. Then let's just rate your distractions. And by rating the distractions in order, you're almost admitting that it is distracting. So Johnny, you know, I didn't say anything after this exercise. Like, okay, I just wanted to do this exercise with you. And the next week he came back, it's like, hey, Deanna, I tried something new last week. And I said, what? I wanted to see if I put my phone in another room for, you know, and then I would just check back every 20 minutes and see if I got any text or something like that. I will need to see if there's any difference between my, you know, productivity level. It's like, oh, wow, I'm glad that you decided to check it out. That's a good experiment. So here's a question for you. And if you have any comments that you would like to share, you can type up your responses or your thinking in the chat box. What kind of habits, what kind of productive habits would you like your child to have as an adult? And what is something you can do that is proactive today for your child?
Deanna, this is Elizabeth. Can you see some of the chat stuff? Okay.
So what I'm seeing is you would like your child to have self-regulation, resilience, efficiency. Those are really good goals that we can have. Or someone said, I want my kids to follow through. I love these big picture thinking. Now, the next thinking pie will give you more tools on how we can help our kids to foster these habits. One person asked me about the Johnny's experiment about electronics, right? And how if he found out that if removing the electronics as far away from his body when he's working on his homework has been helpful. After 3 weeks of doing that, Johnny told me, Deanna, you know what? It's really, really hard to put my phone in a different room. However, I did notice an improvement in my focus. I didn't have to shift my brain back and forth, looking at my text and then going back to the computer and writing my essay. But he realized that the first step, being proactive, is really important. Because once he starts homework, it's in the middle of doing homework, it's really hard to stop. But if he can just kind of plan ahead or be proactive and think about if he really needs non-distraction-free environment for his homework, then he will need to do that. But he said it kind of depends on the homework too. Let's move on to the second piece of thinking pie. The first one was proactive approach. Thinking about the future, visualizing what habits and skills our children want to have. The second one is about details. It's called systematic approach. It's all about details. Mary Sklar, she's one of my mentors in this field. He came up with a term, we need to become a time scientist. When you think of a scientist, what do you think of? I think of a smock, think of a lab, think of notepad. So she taught me a visual time tool called time circles. So if you look at the slide, it starts from 5-minute increment, 15-minute, 30-minute, 40-minute, 45 minutes, and 1 hour. In order to be a good time manager, we need to be able to estimate how long our task is supposed to take. So this is what it would look like on your child's to-do list for one evening. You can use a pre-made planner, or you can just use a spiral notebook. So this kid, which he really enjoyed doing this after a few sessions, he would write down, make a checkbox, and then write down shorthand, what subject it is and what it is, and then he needs to estimate if he knows how long it's going to take. And then at the end of each task, he can compare if the estimation was close to the actual time. You can kind of make it into a game. I like to use the analogy of billable hours with my little guys, especially, to talk about how time is like money. Actually, I had one student whose father was an attorney. So I asked him, hey, Brad, so I heard that your father is an attorney. So do you know about this billable hours? And, he knew about it, and how if we can, let's say, get paid $10 per minute we spend on doing work for our clients, how much money would you get paid? And how many cases would you take based on your estimation? It's a serious business. And it's always interesting to find out how kids tend to underestimate their projects and their tasks. And having this time log, is kind of cool because they get to be a scientist and they can go back and say, hey, next time I need to, estimate or allocate more time for science because I always tend to underestimate that. Remember the backwards planning that we saw earlier? So there's new feature on these sticky notes. You see the time circles there? Yes. So when high school student comes to me and say, oh, I need to write a 5-page essay. And I ask them, okay, just a ballpark. How many hours do you think it's going to take for you to finish that paper? And he pauses for about a few seconds and he says, maybe a couple hours. And I, have a smile. It's like, okay, let's find out. We're going to do a little exercise. Okay, we're going to go back to this time log. I forgot to mention one thing. Thank you, Lisa, for your question. Very observant. Do you see how there's numbers on it? That shows the priority order. In which order do you want to proceed with your homework schedule? We're going to talk more about setting priorities later on. But I'm glad that you noticed that. Good job, Lisa. Okay, back to this. So the student said, okay, I think it's going to take about maybe 3 hours at the most. And I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to do it the day before. I was like, okay, fine. So we do the sticky note and we break it down into little chunks. Okay. So today we can just work on the planning stage. And then he says, okay, fine. And then I said, okay, now I would like you to estimate how long it's going to take for each task. So each section. And then what we did is we added up all our time circles and compare with how many hours he estimated at the beginning for the whole thing. This is an eye-opening thing because kids, once again, they learn through these exercises. We can't just tell them, okay, you need to get started early on. They usually learn by mistakes or they learn through these visual tool. So when my clients add up all these circles, like, wow, it's actually a lot more than what I expected. My goodness, I better get started, as soon as possible. So look at this tiny plant. I think teaching time management skills is not a one-time thing, but it's an accumulation of repeated behaviors. It's like nurturing a tiny plant in our garden. Isn't it a lot of work? Yes, raising kids is a lot of work. So here's my story. A couple years ago, I really wanted to be more fit. So that was my New Year's resolution, and I said, I'm going to exercise. So this is 2015 calendar. I got a little calendar and said, every time I exercise, I'm going to log in what I did and which day. And if you can look carefully, there's highlights. The highlighted parts show the days that I went to the gym or I exercise in my garage. And I really wanted to take a systematic approach documenting my progress. And this has really helped me achieve my goal. I think as I was taking pictures, I actually saved this calendar because it really meant a lot to me. And this calendar, this documentation, showed me a glimpse of my past performance, my current performance, and what I need to do in the future. So every time I log in, I say, oh, wow, my goal is to do 3 times a week. And this week, I only did 1, so I better do 2 more times. And even though my exercise routine has become more automatic, I go into autopilot, like I feel weird when I don't exercise for a whole week for some reasons, I still log in my workouts. It's kind of fun for me and it's become a reward. It's like, oh, hey, I'm going to go home and I get to log in. Or sometimes I go to the gyms because I noticed that I didn't log in anything this week. I know life happens, illnesses, vacations, events, house guests, but this really helped me to just move forward and continue with my goal. Chris Widener, in the book The Ultimate Success Series, came up with this greatest equation. Choices we made on small tasks multiplied by time equals long-term accomplishments. When I gave birth to my twin boys, it was a traumatic experience. Not only I lost a third of my blood, I was very weak and my joints were not working. So my first goal is to be able to unbuckle my baby's car seatbelt. That was really difficult for me. So I decided to join a senior exercise class at the gym in my community. And of course, I was the youngest one because most people are in their 70s. That's the average age of the senior class. I got a lot of love and affection from them. And I was working out with 2-pound dumbbells, really building muscles because I wanted to make sure I can hold my arm up to feed my kids. And over time, these little exercises and little dumbbells that I was lifting, one day I found myself doing a handstand. I was just amazed, blown away by how much stronger my body has become over time. Have you ever experienced anything like this? I'm sure that those of you who are on the webinar right now have a lot of accomplishments. And to share this experience with our kids and to help them accomplish their goals would be fascinating. So here's a funny story of my boys. As a mom of twins, I'm always thinking about how can I streamline, how can I simplify, how can I save time raising these kids, especially the first 3 years. One day I was pulling into the driveway and one of the boys started singing this song. Shoes on the shoe rack, jacket on the hook, la 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 la, Caillou. So Caillou was one of the shows that they were watching, and this is a song that was stuck with his brain. And what I did was I really wanted to save time and stress by training my kids to do their chore. And their chore was to put away their shoes on the shoe rack and hang the jacket before they go and play with their toys. Every day, every time I would come home, I would just sing that song and show them how to do it. And one day, it just clicked in their brain. And now they're singing the song. And that has saved a lot of headaches and naggings in our house. And guess what? Even my husband is so much better at putting away his shoes and jacket. So teaching time management skills doesn't have to be all serious, but I think we can have a little bit of fun and humor. For me, music is a big part of my life, and I'm always thinking of songs to help our kids transition smoothly from one to the other. Brian Tracy, in the book Time Management Made Simple, he talks about 1 to 10 ratio. 1 minute of planning can save up to 10 minutes of execution. How often do you sit down with your child and spend that couple minutes planning out the evening or planning out their project instead of staying up late the day before the report is due, helping our kids finish their work? But our kids are very skeptical, and sometimes it takes a long time for them to learn a lesson. And I think one of the most efficient ways to teach this 1 to 10 ratio is by taking a systematic approach and documenting and showing them, hey, look, this is a comparison. With planning, with no planning, we've saved so much time. Now we can have more free time. Documentation is a tedious work, and I'm not a tedious person, but I'm learning to enjoy documentation because the benefits are great. The thing about logging in the information, it really shows the tiny progresses our kids make. Overall picture. Instead of focusing on one perfect or one good example. I'm sure you agree that our brain is so unreliable. We only remember certain things. And when we look back, it's really hard to recall all those little moments that we can celebrate with our kids. The only way to do that is by documenting. And if your kids resist to make a time log, like I showed you earlier, then you can say, oh, it's just for mommy's brain. Can I just write it down for you? You can start out with that until they're ready to take over. This is the end of the second piece of pie, and here's a question for you. Which system do you want to place in your home, and how are you going to document the progress? So someone asked me what system. System can be a tool. What I mean by which tool do you want to use in your home to help with the efficiency? Okay, someone said that you like the time circles, so you can start using them. Someone said you like to use the calendar. That's wonderful. So let's move on to the third piece of the thinking pie. I call it flexible approach. Flexible approach is all about detours, all about patience. So to learn this flexible approach, we need to learn a little bit about our brain. Do you see that blue circle right there behind the forehead? It's called prefrontal cortex, or you can call it PC. Did you know that it takes about 25 years for that part of the brain to mature? And it's the last part of the brain to mature. This information gives us some hope as parents that, wow, our kids' brain is going to get better. They're going to get better with time management and other brain skills. And prefrontal cortex helps get things done on time. We're going to go more in detail later on about what those brain skills are, but I want you to just get the big picture about PC. This is where the wise owl lives in, the rational part of our brain. Sometimes I call it thinking brain with elementary school kids. But here's the bad news. The demands of the school that our kids are facing right now are much higher than our brain capacity. I like to use this analogy of iPhone 3 with my students. Some of them never seen iPhone 3, but others, they understand when I say iPhone 3. My husband had iPhone 3 until like December of last year. And the capacity of this iPhone could not take care of the demands and keep up with the demands that the functions that he wanted to do. So it's kind of like what our kids are facing right now with their brain. The school is asking a lot, and the curriculum is getting more challenging, and they're moving through the curriculum faster. However, it takes time for our kids' brain to grow. So look at the construction sign, under construction sign. I'm sure you've experienced a lot of contradictions. One moment, our child will say, hey, Mom, I don't need any of your help. I'm fine. And the next moment, they enjoy getting help. They're rational and sophisticated thinker one moment. They're very emotional and immature on the other hand. It's because their brain is going through restructuring, under construction. This makes a lot of sense in theory, but in real life it's really hard to really remember that. So this is a picture that I have for myself. These are my twin boys, and I put this little construction sign on their forehead so I can remind myself that, whenever they have meltdowns, I can say, okay, here they go again. The Bob the Builders are working, so I need to kind of take a step back and be flexible with my approach. Maybe it's not going to go the way that I expected them to be. So now that you understand PC, prefrontal cortex, I'm going to add one more term for our brain. It's called limbic system. Do you see a little flame on top of the red circle? Limbic system is an almond-shaped part of our brain, which is located lower than the prefrontal cortex, and it helps us to survive. When our brain feels threatened, then our limbic system goes into survival mode. Fight, flight, or freeze. Sometimes this little flame can take over our prefrontal cortex, our thinking brain, because emotions can be so powerful. So when do we need to be flexible with our kids? Let's say the system, the tool you've been using with your kids, it's been working for the most part, but there are days that their limbic system feels threatened. Their fire is out of control. Then we need to kind of come in and be flexible. Mary D. Sklar said this: our emotional experience with learning affects our ability to get things done on time. Whenever your kids are doing homework or working on long-term projects, what kind of emotions do they associate with? Realistically, I don't think we can expect them to have super positive, oh, I'm so excited to do my project. However, if we can minimize the negative emotional experiences when they're doing their productive work, I think we are doing a good job as parents. Because emotions play a big role in learning and getting things done. So these are the other brain skills that prefrontal cortex governs. I'm going to start with task initiation, 1 o'clock position, and then go clockwise. So time management skill is a complex skill because it has to be working in conjunction with other brain skills. Task initiation means the ability to start immediately. Have you ever driven really old cars? It takes a while to warm up, right? Some brains, they get started on their task right away. Others, they kind of need to warm up between different tasks. The next one is prioritizing. Some students know exactly what is the most important task they need to be doing. Others, they have no idea. They all seem important to them. The next skill is working memory. It's the ability to hold information such as multi-step directions when you're doing a science lab or cooking a recipe, brand new recipe, while performing a task. The next one is set shifting. Ability to be flexible and going to different thinking mode. You know how we have a right brain and left brain? When we are relaxing, a part of our brain is turned on, right? And then we go into math homework. Now we have to be in math mode. Now we have to go into writing mode. Depending on how well you can do set shifting, you can save a lot of time. The next one is response inhibition. It's the ability to say no to our brain, ability to control our impulses. if we have trouble saying no to distractions or impulses, it would be really hard to manage time, even if you know how. The last one is planning. The ability to break down a huge project into little chunks. Some kids are really good at managing their little homework, like daily homework, but when it comes to big assignments, they don't know how to manage their time because their planning skill is lagging. I know some of the terms are unfamiliar to you, but the big picture is there are a lot of brain skills that are related, will work in hand with time management skills. So we need to remember that time management skill is a complex skill. So life is a bumpy road, and there are many stressors, and we're going to talk about procrastination. Have you ever seen your kids procrastinate? Yes. Piers Steele and his procrastination equation has 4 factors that contribute to procrastination. First is impulsiveness. How well do you control your impulses? Next is the distance to deadline. If the project is a week from now versus 5 months from now, you're more likely to procrastinate. The next one is proximity to temptation. The closer the distractions are to you, it's more likely you're going to procrastinate. The last one is interest level. The less interested you are, the more likely to you procrastinate. So which of the factors do you think that your kid is affected by? So this is the end of the 3rd section. Is your child's procrastination related to projects, or is it a result of habits? The last piece is called reflective approach. This is my favorite word, metacognition. It's defined as thinking about thinking. Having an understanding or awareness of one's own thought processes. It's kind of like being able to zoom out and having a bird's eye view of yourself. Julie Morgenstern came up with 4 Ds to help us develop our time management skills. We need to constantly make decisions when we are working on something. Do we delete? Delay? Do it later on? Diminish? Should we take a shortcut or long cut? Or delegate? Maybe we can involve someone else to help us with our project, such as buying paper for our printer, things like that. So when we are having these reflective conversations with our kids, we can see in hindsight, sometimes our decisions help us save time. Other times it wasted our time. It was a time robber. So success is not about being brilliant, but it's about being consistent. So some of our kids take this perfectionistic approach, and they want to do something until they're satisfied at the expense of other work. But we really want to emphasize being consistent, having a balanced approach. So here is a picture that a lot of kids have. It's like running a marathon. It's like, okay, I'm going to kind of start out with warm up, start out with easy task, and then I'm going to finish with my important task. However, a lot of students don't know that life is not like that. There's a lot of unexpected finish lines. Sometimes we finish earlier than we expected. So these dots represent task. Sometimes we may not get to the important task that you were trying to do. Sometimes we may not get to everything. If you have a full-time job, It's really hard to do everything on our to-do list, right? Because our time is finite. So I'm going to flip this picture and go with purposeful work. How about we start with the most important task? Maybe that is, for you, maybe it is working on a long-term project that you're dreading, or it could be studying for a test that the teacher does not assign and you don't actually physically turn in. Maybe it is self-care. Maybe it's taking downtime. I don't know, whatever that is, but we want to start with the most important task. So Roy Baden said, you multiply time by giving yourself the emotional permission to spend time on things today that will give you more time tomorrow. So one thing that resonated with this quote is the word emotional permission. Sometimes time management is about understanding our emotions and not having regrets at the end of the day. So I always wanted to have a dad who is highly educated with multiple degrees, respected in his career. However, my dad is just a hardworking blue-collar worker. As I was preparing for this webinar, I thought about who really influenced me to value time, and it was my dad, because my dad tricked my brain by placing clocks all around the house and setting it 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes faster than when it's supposed to be. I knew the time was faster, but I didn't know by exactly how many minutes and which clock was how many minutes faster. So, but his trick really helped me to understand that I underestimate my time. And looking at our clock is 8 o'clock, and I think that I might have underestimated my presentation, even with the rehearsals. So your kids will remember the values that you're going to show, whether it's directly or indirectly. If not now, in hindsight. You know, we're not perfect as parents, but as long as we're trying our best and trying to be consistent, I think our kids will pick up on our values and skills. So managing time is really about managing self. It's about disciplining ourselves. It's managing and self-controlling. And it's about delaying gratification. And here's a quote that really inspired me that was written by one of my students. He says, habits, being one of the most difficult traits to master, are one of the most rewarding. He's only a 7th grader, but he deeply thought about this topic, habits. So what's going to be an action step for you? What are you going to do today to take that tiny step? And I think that it would be really helpful if you actually develop a time management skill in conjunction with your child or children. So you can say, mommy's going to work on this, daddy's going to work on this, and how about you work on that? And we're going to see where we get from there.
Yeah. Hey, Deanna, this is Elizabeth again. Can you go back to your references? I just want to leave that on screen long enough so we can actually read through it when we're on the recording. Because I think you've got some good books in here if people want to go get more, more depth, more information. So even though our hour is up, Deanna can stay a few more minutes and take questions. So if there's any particular issue that you guys are having with your kids that you want to explore, go ahead and type that into the box. And if you are one of our folks who's on a phone line, like I said, you can email me at update@summitcenter.us, and if the email comes in a timely manner, then maybe we can do that. So does anybody have any thing, more details that you want, or questions? I'm not seeing anything. Here we go. So it looks like this parent has a idea about doing a binder for their schedule. Do you see that, Deanna?
Mm-hmm.
This is your plan. Excellent. Not a question. So yeah, her idea is to dedicate a binder to morning, evening schedule using the time clocks, the little sketches of with the estimates, and a daily log. Focus on planning and reviewing to see how we did. And now here is a question, Deanna. How do you deal with a child who procrastinates because interest level is so low?
That's a very good question. If that's the case, then we need to bring in incentives to motivate our kids. We have to bring in other outside interests. Some kids don't believe in bribing our kids, but I know that this can be a very difficult thing for some of our kids, and I think we can come up with positive incentives to really help our kids learn. I think that once they experience success with few incentives at the beginning, they will eventually learn to regulate their interest level.
Yeah, I think incentives are a great idea. Hi there. Does anyone else have anything? We have a few more minutes. Go ahead and type in your questions. The thing that I was thinking about, because I have a fifth grader, is just he's used to getting his incentives on a regular basis, but now as he's getting older, big projects come up, and then he feels bad that he doesn't have time for TV or games because he's got more work. As they get older, they get more work, more responsibilities. So it's not really a question, but have to give more rewards, I think, when the project is done.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another question here. Until what age do you think we should keep breaking down long-term projects into smaller pieces for the kids? She's talking about a teenager who's almost 15.
So we need to do it gradually, release the responsibility gradually. So at first we, walk through it and demonstrate. And then the next time I make it clear to the students that I work with, especially high school students, I talk about how much they can handle. So eventually it might be, here is what you can do. And it's really kid by kid, case by case. But I would like you to see how much you can do by yourself. And then I'm going to fill in the missing things. Sometimes we need to kind of allow room for our kids to make mistakes. Mistakes are good things, right? But if you're always doing it for them, then it would be hard for them to learn that skill.
Yeah, mistakes are the best way to learn, for sure. Terrific. Well, if someone else has a question, type it in now, because we are going to wrap up soon. I don't see anything in my email, so. Oh, question before last. Any tips about self-control? Thank you for pointing that one out. Do you have any tips about self-control? We homeschool, and sometimes we've tried hard to put together a plan and manage our time, but it's hard to sustain what they're doing and not get distracted.
Self-control is a very big topic. And depending on, if the kids have ADHD and other issues, then it's a different thing. But I think setting expectations up front and giving specific feedback, or also coming up with hand gestures to prompt them, visually prompt them, to let them know whether they're doing a good job with their self-control or they need to, not do certain things, might be an idea that you can try.
What do you mean by hand gestures?
Hand gestures. So some kids respond better with maybe tap on the shoulders instead of telling them, "Hey, you need to go back to work," right? It can be it can backfire, right? So depending on your kid's style,
Uh-huh.
well, I would ask the kid, like, how do you want to be reminded? If let's say our goal is to stay on task and not go off track, and then come up with an agreed hand gesture, like maybe tap on the table or something like that. I'd rather be, reminded that way than saying, "Hey, go back to your work."
Instead of nagging.
Yeah. And I know another family that has dedicated one device for productivity work and use the other ones for entertainment. Instead of using the
Uh-oh. Deanna, you've frozen for me. I don't know why. So maybe we've lost Deanna, and I'm not sure if we're going to get her back for the last question from the parent who's not there all the time. But it looks like Deanna's computer ran out of juice, so I'm very sorry. But we're out of time anyway, and thank you so much for joining us. We're going to have another webinar in a month or two, and I'll let you all know about that. And I hope you've enjoyed this one. So thank you so much. We're going to close off, and I'm going to say goodbye on behalf of Deanna. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.